We can't change our lives until we change our minds. This is a thought from Real Artists Don't Starve by Jeff Goins. This is the subject of a book club that I'm a part of with some other YouTube creators and some authors. They would consider themselves artists as they put forth their work. Me, I'm James, a father of four in my 40s, seeking greater personal growth and development. And this is what I've learned from part one of this book. In the introduction, Jeff talks about Michelangelo, or however you would say that, but Michelangelo was the Ninja Turtle that I knew. So he's who I'm talking about today. Michelangelo was told that he was the son and heir of aristocrats. And because of that, he acted as such. His mind was set and made up of who he was and who he was in society and what he could do. And so, because of that, he had a lot of assignments given to him by a lot of wealthy individuals. And they found that Michelangelo in today's world would have been a millionaire during the Renaissance as an artist. And so Jeff was using that as an example of real artists don't starve, because the myth is that if you're an artist, you're a starving artist. Some of my thoughts when you first come on there, that real artists are artists that are spending your time on things that matter most to you. And starving is similar to spending your money on that which is of no worth and your labor for that which cannot satisfy. And so I think that's really kind of the definition of starving that I would use as I reviewed this first section of Jeff's book. That artists and thriving artists, as Jeff puts it, are those that work in the space in which they have talents and certain attributes that help them to grow and to share and to help others grow as well. And one of the rules for thriving artists is thriving artists steal from other artists. I grew up learning that stealing wasn't a good thing. And so, having a background in biology, I feel that thriving artists digest art in different ways from different artists and masters. Similar to the way our bodies digest our food, and then that becomes incorporated in who we are. So too, I feel artists digest the work of others and then incorporate it into their own work. So I don't really care for that term stealing. Like I said, I grew up feeling that it was a negative thing. So Jeff, I'm gonna go ahead and change that in my book, that thriving artists digest the work of other artists and incorporate it into their own. And then you are where you are in life because of the things you let into your mind. I started with that quote that we can't change our lives until we change our minds. The mind is the center of everything. We need to first have experiences, whether it's through media or just living life, that allow us to have that hope for a better day, and that our work can be impactful, whether we're artists, whether we're writing books or music, or for myself, customer service emails. I feel like there is a hero's journey in every customer service email if it's well written. Part one's about mindset. It goes through the first 4 chapters of this book. Once again, it is Real Artists Don't Starve by Jeff Goins. Chapter 1, before you can create great art, you first have to create yourself. I think there's principles about you can't draw water from an empty well, and you can't give water from an empty cup. So creating ourselves and developing ourselves are important principles to change and to live a thriving life. in whatever we do. Recreating yourselves and letting go of what you were before, and accepting a new identity. We have to see ourselves in the future, and see a hope for the new future. I often think of the movie The Greatest Showman, and P.T. Barnum at the very beginning of that movie has a vision of the life that he can have, and he has this vision while he's wearing clothes that are ragged and being treated poorly by others, at least the wealthy in society. He is served by those that eventually serve him and help him accomplish his goals and dreams. So another thought I put down here is, what is the story that you tell yourself? Like, once again, Michelangelo, the story he told himself was that he was an aristocrat, that he was somebody of value, that he had a lot of value to add to society. And because of that, he was given numerous positions. And so what is the story you tell yourself? What's the dominant voice in your head? Let's rewrite that if we need to, and create a better mindset going forward as we create our art. A quote that was brought up by another member of this book club is, "We don't fake it till you make it, you believe it until you become it." Now, I think beliefs are influenced by the experiences we've had. Like I've said before, what is that voice in your head? Is it your parents? Is it teachers? Is it, bullies on the schoolyard? Whatever it was, we need to add some new experiences and replace those things so that we can become greater and share more art with the world. Another quote that I found impactful here is that if you don't have to go all in, don't. There are many stories shared here in this book of lawyers and others that were seeking after second careers, basically, um, and working to overcome burnout. And they stayed in their full-time careers while they were being apprentices. And that was one of the other rules for thriving artists, is to be an apprentice to a master. Take up an apprenticeship, learn some of these skills, do those things. But if you don't have to go all in, don't put yourself under that kind of stress to have to provide and produce. It might not yield the best art for you or for those that consume your art. Also, another thought is, life is a series of small steps, more than a single giant leap. I definitely agree with this. It is by small things that great things do happen. One of my favorite courses in school was cellular biology, and you would not believe the number of small things that go into a single cell living and functioning in your body, and there are trillions of those cells. It also reminds me of the importance of hardening off plants. As a gardener here, we have to prepare our plants for the external environment. You start seeds inside, but then as you prepare them for the outside, you don't just throw them out there. You expose them slowly to those things. You take small steps to get them, to keep them viable so that they can thrive in the garden in which they are planted. You can do extraordinary things when you patiently persist. Patient persistence reminds me of a story about Zig Ziglar. Zig Ziglar was incredibly overweight at one point in time in his life, and so he applied the BAM method to his physical activity. It was a block and a mailbox. BAM. So he would jog or walk at the first, his block, and then add a mailbox, a little bit at a time. This consistent, persistent lifestyle that Zig lived allowed him to get into greater shape and physical health. So it is these small things that can make a big difference. Let's see, all this so far is from chapter 1. Our work begins with a decision. We have to make the choice. We have to make that conscious effort um, to do our art and to do those things. Um, Life is not fixed. Things are always changing. Yes, life is always changing. Things are always changing. We can always change. We can always grow and develop and adapt. Um, and I don't necessarily agree with um, a statement in the book that it says if you remove us from the system and give yourself a new set of skills and bring you back to the place you left. If life is always changing, you can't go back to the place you left. It's always changing. It's not the same. You can still have an influence there, but I think that's important to remember that the place you return to is always different. If you've ever grown up in a place that is far from where you live now and you return, even after a short period of time, you know that life is changing. Life is changing, and it does not stand still. You're either regressing or you're progressing. Um, so, what's out there or what's out there in the future and that kind of stuff is almost certain to be better than staying where you are now. Just going for that one step, doing those small things is going to be better than staying where you're at now. Because once again, staying where you're at now is regression. It is not progression. Um, and it reminds me of another book, How Will You Measure Your Life? I believe Jared also mentioned that book in his book club notes. It's just kind of a coincidence that I was listening to that at the time on Audible. And Clayton Christensen mentioned needing to have a sketch of who you want to become. And sketches aren't perfect portraits and that kind of thing, but it's just a vision of who you want to be and who you can be in this world um, and for other people. And so having that sketch of what you want to become is important. Chapter 2, finally, we're on to the second chapter. Thank you for sticking with me. If you have read Jeff Goins' book, please comment in below about the things that you've learned from these first 4 chapters. If you agree with some of my thoughts, or if you have other ideas based off what I've shared, just put that in the comments below and we'll keep this discussion going. Chapter 2, creative work involves putting together old ideas and offering new insights on them. Totally agree with this thought. Once again, it's that digestive thought where we bring something in, break it down, and then incorporate those things that we want to incorporate into our lives and into our futures. So the most creative minds in the world are not especially creative. They're just better at rearrangement. I find this to be true even in the creative period recorded in scripture. It was an organization of material or a rearrangement of material that was already there and not a new creation itself. We must become students before we become masters. Yep, once again, we have to learn. We have to learn from others. We have to digest things. We won't have strength unless we're digesting things. You think of people that are in the gym and maybe you hit the gym and maybe you're taking supplements. Those supplements are important to grow your body and to give yourself strength. And so that's what a student does. We have to identify things that are important for us to take in, those inputs into various aspects of our lives, whether it's our physical finances or even in our home or in our parenting. There are good things out there. There's great resources out there, and we'll continue to talk about those here on this channel. We find our voice by mimicking the voices of others. As a father with young children, mimicry is something you see a lot in your children and a lot in your kids. Sometimes it's the habits you'd prefer them not to take up and carry on. Just the frustration, the sounds, the man, and it's like, gee, that sounds like somebody. Maybe it's only me. Probably not. But so the question is, who are you listening to? What are you consuming? Whose works are you consuming? Are you consuming positive things? Are you consuming mediocre things? Or are you just consuming fluff? I mean, think about it. Think about all the food and things that we have out there. You know, I think there's entertainment out there that leaves us less than satisfied um, as men. Uh, and then another thought is we need to curate before we create, and gather the ingredients before making the meal. We cannot make a meal unless we first gathered those ingredients and brought them in. And so if we're going to create something, we need to be consuming. So I hope you're consuming great things. I talked about that a little bit on my commute video about our education versus entertainment ratio. What is yours? Think about it just a little bit. Here's chapter 3. Achieving goals comes through gradual and persistent actions in the right direction. Once again, going back to Zig Ziglar and BAM, block in the mailbox. His goal was to get in greater physical shape, and he did that by being consistent in doing that small thing. Become the ideal client or customer to somebody that you would want to mentor you, even before you would reach out to them to mentor you and to help you along in your journey. Along the thought leaders that we will consume their information. Don't necessarily have one-on-one coaching opportunities or mentor opportunities. We're not necessarily going to be able to sit down across the table from somebody like Jeff Goins or even Seth Godin, who wrote an endorsement for this book, or even Stephen Pressfield, whose War of Art book is amazing as well. We're not necessarily going to be able to sit down with these thought leaders, but we can consume their content and act on their content and become master students. And then if we had the opportunity, we could reach out and they would use us as a case study instead of just somebody looking for free advice and that kind of thing. So it's important to act on those things. So he identified a couple steps here. Step 1 is to find a master and consume all the content possible from that master. And step 2 is do exactly what they say. A great master teacher in scripture is Christ. And so many of us who follow Christ will consume as much scripture as possible and then strive to do what he says and to become a greater follower of Christ. And so whoever you are modeling yourself after, consume as much content as possible that they have put out and then do exactly what they say and put those things into effect in your life. Now, once again, on a digestive side of things, some things might not fit into what you can do in your family situation, in your home situation, your work situation, these kind of things. If it doesn't fit into what you can do, just do what you can. Make those changes that you can make. And then just reiterating the idea of first becoming the case study before asking for help. How awesome would that be to be featured in their books and material because you followed what they were talking about and asking people to do. Now, chapter 4 was about being stubborn, but being stubborn in the right places. I'll tell you, I'm reading this book on Kindle on my phone, and I honestly did not highlight a lot of things in chapter 4. I cannot remember. I think it's F. Scott Fitzgerald, who is the author that is mentioned Actually, let me just look it up really quick. Bear with me as I look this up. As I'm looking this up, if you've found value in this video, please go ahead and hit that like button if you're still with me. Yeah, it just, there's not much here on stubbornness. Let me see who this author was that was mentioned. Let's see. It was, yeah, Fitzgerald, F. Scott Fitzgerald. Yeah, so a famous author who wrote The Great Gatsby. I talked about how at the beginning he had a large drive and he was grinding away because there was a girl that had caught his eye. And she refused to marry him until he was a successful author. And he had to prove that he was successful as an author. And so eventually he got to the point where he was successful. And then I think he lost his hunger. Uh, Jeff Goins says real artists don't starve, but I think they remain hungry. I think they remain hungry to change and to grow and become better and that kind of thing. And so F. Scott Fitzgerald lost that hunger. He lost that stubbornness. He tried to be perfect and write these perfect works and these kind of things, fell into some really hard times because of it, and then stopped valuing himself. And so I think when it comes to, once again, real artists acting within their realm or their sweet spots, and then starving, now it's important to be hungry, but not starving. And so that's my thoughts on the first 4 chapters of Jeff Goins' Real Artists Don't Starve, all about mindset. Once we get our mind right, then we can start acting right. All right, I hope you've enjoyed this video. We'll see you on the next one.